I saw this meme yesterday. Michael Bumpus hanging out with us for 15 more minutes before doing double duty later this afternoon on the Jake and Stacy program. It's a picture of a dude who's smugly just sitting down and there's a bunch of swords pointed at him. And the question that I had is, what Seahawks opinion of yours gets you this reaction where the knives come out and everyone comes after you? And there's a conversation taking place right now because of a text, Danny, that we got that has to do with Shaun Alexander. So Danny and Bump, you guys have been here longer than me. Shaun Alexander, to me, is the guy who was on the cover of Madden 2007 and is one of the best running backs that was in the NFL over the past decade, like in the 2000s. And yet, it seems like he is not well liked here. And that is very strange to me, given that he was a part of the Seahawks' first surge to relevance.
Yeah. I would argue, my two Seahawks takes in this would be, Jermaine Kearse has endured more criticism than anyone ever should. He's the most underrated player, and I don't get it. The second one would be that Shaun Alexander, somehow the only MVP in Seahawks history, is criminally underrated. Yeah, he's not popular. And not only that, there are people who believe that he was an underachiever, which when you go back and look at the stats he racked up,
insane.
Yeah. But there are people who will say, look, it'll happen right now. If you said Shaun Alexander was a more productive running back for the Seahawks than Marshawn Lynch, again, that's factually impeccable. Like that is definitively true. Watch what'll happen. People will flip out. The 710, get mad. Write your letters in crayons. Like storm the castle. Talk to me about Hutch. All these other things that'll come up.
I think it's how it ended with Shaun Alexander. It was almost like after the MVP, he stopped. He was like shying away from contact. I remember seeing him go down. I'm like, why is he going down? Like, you're a running back. Like, get these extra yards. It was just his style of play. You talk about a finesse. He wasn't a real power guy. He looked like a power guy. You see those elbow pads and the shoulder pads. You think, okay, he's going to run through a guy. He wasn't a power type of guy. So I think after the MVP and all that, he started getting out of bounds, and people just didn't like it. That's why they love Marshawn. You think of running back, people automatically think of Marshawn Lynch's style of play. I think if Shaun Alexander played in today's game, then maybe it wouldn't have gone sour like it did.
That's such an interesting point about the aesthetics bump, because you're exactly right. You have all those elbow pads on. Maybe you are expected to be more physical than you actually are as a running back. And I'm not 100% sure in 2006 after that MVP season. He only played in 10 games, so I'm assuming that there was some injury along the way.
Broken bone in his foot.
Okay.
Broken bone in his foot, which he also proclaimed that he had preyed on, and that had resulted in it being healed. And he expected to come back after missing a week, and then they took more tests, and they're like, no, we think it's still cracked. Like there was a whole ordeal about how long he was out for that as well.
Okay. There is a noticeable statistical drop from the MVP season on, and maybe that's what it's all about.
No, it existed before that.
Wow.
It really did. It existed. The point where it started was at the end of the 2004 season, and he finished 1 yard short of the rushing title, and they won a game against the Falcons to clinch a playoff berth. This is the end of the 2004 season, to clinch the division. And afterwards, Shaun said that he had been stabbed in the back because they were at the 1 yard line, and Matt Hasselbeck snuck the ball in and scored a touchdown. And he said, we were at the freaking goal line. Like, I feel like I was stabbed in the back because I didn't get to rush that yard. He was complaining about the way Seattle scored the clinching touchdown of a game in which they needed to win to make the playoffs. It looked bad.
Oh, man.
It looked really bad.
And the irony of that comment with, of course, Marshawn Lynch being rather silent about not getting the handoff in an actual Super Bowl.
Where you lost.
Right. That context is something else. Man, stabbed in the back over statistics. That is a giant yikes.
Here's the thing though, every player cares about statistics. I don't care what they say.
Oh, no
Oh,
doubt.
it's all about the team. Nah, homie. You want that extra 100 yards. There's incentives in your contract. Let's be 100 about it. So he just said the truth. He told the truth. He said what people didn't want to hear, and it rubbed them the wrong way because they want people to say, I'll die for this team. I'll do anything for this team. End of the day, you're going to make sure you get your stats so you get your money.
That is, Bump, you're invaluable because you're willing to shoot. You're right. You're right. Everybody would have felt some sort of way. Like Marshawn definitely feels a way about not getting the ball in that situation. He just doesn't say it out loud like Shaun did after the game. And the Seahawks won the game, which makes it look a little worse.
Yeah.
Because he's complaining about the way that they won it because it didn't go through him. He was also, in covering Shaun, there's a slightly delusional element of his personality. And I'll give you an example. ESPN, the magazine, was doing a cover story on him, and he suggested to the writer that the way to set up the photo shoot for the cover was to have his 5 offensive linemen dressed up as Christmas elves and to have Shaun seated behind them, perhaps in a Santa suit, saying, "All I want for Christmas," as he's holding the MVP trophy and the Lombardi. And if anybody knew those offensive linemen, like the idea of getting Robbie Tobeck or Steve Hutchinson to wear an elf costume while he's sitting behind them, like there's no way. Like, and that's what I mean just by that. It's not malicious. It was just like he saw things a little bit differently, and that wasn't a way that always resonated with his teammates or with the fans.
It's a little different.
All that said, when people say that he underachieved, I was like, he must have been the best running back ever created by God then. If he was able to rack up those statistics while underachieving, like if he was able to do that while, like he must have been seriously, like that guy was Jim Brown times O.J. Simpson. If he was able to do, I mean, like you look at, to underachieve and rack up the numbers, it's like 6 straight years where he has 1,200 yards or more rushing. It's an unbelievable statistical haul that he had. So that's why I would say he is underrated. I know why he's underrated, and it has to do with how he resonated with fans, but he is underrated. There's no doubt about that.
Personality takes you a long way. And his personality, I think people just didn't really connect with him. There are some people who did and who love him and all that, but then there are the people who like Marshawn Lynch, who like that personality more than that. It's marketability, man. That's all part of it. Your personality affects your jersey sales, how people think of you. They think you're washed up. The dude was the best running back that the Hawks had seen at that time. So I think it's a mix of a bunch of things with Shaun Alexander, but there's no denying the dude was a baller. He was a baller.
From both of you, what would be the quickest way for me to get a proper appropriation of Shaun Alexander's time with Seattle, both the good and the bad? Is there a way that I could find that in a nutshell sort of version where I can understand where people are coming from with the also understanding that this guy was unbelievably productive?
I think you have to look at his highlights, right? Look at the great runs. You see him busting off 30, 40-yard runs. And then you look at the runs that weren't so great. And then you look at an interview. And I think from those 3 things, you could form your own opinion of what and who you think Shaun Alexander is, because no one's going to have the same view of this dude. He's an interesting guy. He really is an interesting guy.
Yes, he is. I would advise you to talk to 2 people. Talk to Dave Wyman and then talk to Paul Moyer.
Okay.
Talk to Wyman and talk to Moyer because they give you 2 very different perspectives on who he was. And Paul Moyer maybe has the best assessment of Shaun Alexander, which is don't criticize him for who he's not. Don't hold it against him the kind of player he wasn't, because there were some limitations in his game. And if you stop asking him to do those things and just appreciate what he was, you probably have a better sense of how incredibly productive he was as a player, instead of wondering about all those times he went out of bounds.
What a fascinating player.
It's hilarious, man. He had this drip, drip, gush style where he'd be like 1 yard, goes down at contact, and then, he ripped off a 37-yard run. He had tremendous vision. And before 2006, up until 2006, he had really good burst.